Boom, boom.
Here we are.
So, okay, April, May. When do you usually go on the water each year? Do you have like you have a day you try to get on by, or like is it dependent on the weather? How you feel about this year going on the water?
It really depends on the weather for me. And in Northern Ontario, we have an extended winter season, but we didn't get a lot of snow this year. So I think we'll probably be able to get on the water late May. But with that being said, whenever I take a trip, like I was in Costa Rica in December, I get on the water. I do a paddleboard tour. So that really kind of extends my ability to be on the water a lot more than just, with the Northern Ontario summer season.
Okay, and then are you going away in April or May again?
In May, I'm going back to Costa Rica for the month, and I'm teaching at a yoga retreat center there. But it's also close to Lake Arenal, so I plan on doing some paddleboarding in May. Yeah, so
Oh,
my season will start early May this year. Um,
okay.
yeah, what about you? Because you're down south, so I'm wondering, how do you get on the water?
Okay, here's the honest truth. It's funny because I get questions from people that are like, um, when are you going out? Are you so excited? Do you have a dry suit? Do you paddle through the winter? And I'm like, no. Honestly, I I am happy for a break when winter comes. I just like taking that time to shift and do other things. I feel re-energized around going on the water. So my honest answer is like when I feel like it. And so usually I also notice too that I am becoming more of a fair weather person. And
Mhm.
so I don't know, I like get cold more easily. And so I'm getting more like tender in those things instead of just like wanting everything to be an adventure. So I'll feel for when it's right and when the sun is shining and it's like I just can't say no. No.
Yeah,
But otherwise, I don't know. I wouldn't anticipate that's till May for sure. Yeah,
I like that idea,
something
waiting until I can't say no.
like yeah. Like I don't have this itch to get back out and maybe sometimes too it's when I'm away from water I don't feel it as strongly, but then when I'm nearby the water I'm like, "Oh yeah," and you kind of feel the pull or you see a nice sunset by the water and you want to kind of be closer to the experience or more immersed. So I think uh same with at the end of every season, right? It's not like I don't try to prolong it as much as possible. It's just like, oh, I guess one day that was the last paddle this year.
You know, I'm definitely the same way as well too. I don't try to extend the season. I feel like there's a time for paddling and I go all out, while the sun is out, while it's warmer weather. But I also don't have a wetsuit or we do here in Timmins, we do a witch paddle, and that's usually we try to push it to late September, and that's usually the final paddle of the season for me.
That's a fun one. Do you do other social paddles? Like everyone's dressed up for that one and
So we do in Timmins there's a fundraising paddle every year, and it's organized by one of the paddleboarders here, Steph Silvati. But every year is a different theme. It started with Paddle for the Cure with breast cancer. Last year we did a prom paddle, so we all dressed up as though we were
mm,
going to prom on our paddleboards, and some of
mm.
us jumped in the lake with our dresses on and our suits. That was a lot of fun. And every year too, like we pick a different charity. So really fun to do those like social events. The paddle community here in Timmins knows that every Wednesday, there's people going on the river around 6 or 7 p.m. and it's kayakers, paddleboarders, and some of those
Cool.
events get to like 20, 30 people in the river. And that's just really organized through the paddle community. Show up as you are with your paddle device. Yeah, and that's usually a fun way to, yeah, paddle in community and get people together.
That's fun. It's nice too when you can have a mix of paddlers, like kayakers and canoers along with. the paddle boards instead of I'm thinking about like skiers and snowboarders, they're like that little bit of rivalry that's like, oh, you're a skier, you're a snowboarder, like
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny because our kayakers are a little bit faster because they get two strokes to, our one, and every once in a while I'll battle a kayaker and try to race them on the river.
why not?
Right?
That's fun. Do you have do you still have goals for yourself with paddling, or do you feel more community focused now? Because I know that you teach a lot, teach paddling and SUP yoga. So is your shift, or I guess your focus is a lot on your business, but do you still kind of hold goals for yourself?
I do. And near the ending of last summer, I got it really into like just doing fun tricks on the board. And
Mm.
paddling, standing on one leg and moving forward. How high I could get my nose up, doing a pivot turn, jumping off the board. And this year, I think I shared a video with you, just like doing a board flip. So really inviting in an element of play um on the paddleboard, jumping to the back of the board,
Yeah.
uh having the paddleboard and jumping like off the dock onto the board. So I've been getting into a little bit more tricks, which I didn't do in the early days of paddleboarding. So inviting in more play, I would say, are the goals. And then going for those longer paddles and building strength, and always working on like paddle technique and skill is always one of my goals. I think you can always improve. Um,
Yeah.
so that's where I'm at, these days. And it shifts every, year, a couple of years. What about you? What are your paddle goals and dreams for you this season?
Mhm. Firstly, that video you shared was really cool. I've never seen that before, that move. So that would be fun for us to try. And yeah, I like the reminder too that like our goal can just be when we're out that time, like the
Hmm.
thing you want to work on,
Hmm.
and that we see a lot of progression through play. Um, for me right now, I think similarly, like it fluctuates, and some years felt like they were really for me to paddle new places or guide folks. One season was really for learning what I could do with distance paddling, and then other seasons were really full of retreats and lessons. And so now for me, I think in the back of my mind, I'm like, do more, remember like how it felt when you started, when everything, because we tend to like paddle the same places now more so, or always be doing lessons or like just the opportunity to teach and get more people involved, which is so wonderful. But kind of like stepping back for a minute to say, like, remember what felt so exciting to you when you first did this, and when it was like feeling new, when you got to explore new places. So I think I want to just do more, be a little bit more spontaneous.
Mm.
And I think that looks like short adventures and camping trips and paddling new places that don't have to be far, but just kind of feeling the newness again is what I would say. And then our retreat, I think, is a really nice goal for both of us this year to offer that SUP yoga teacher training. So that'll be a new thing that we both offered together for the first time in this retreat setting. So that feels really exciting, and just working together to make the program and bring it to life. And yeah, how are you feeling about that as a goal in your end too?
I'm really excited about it, and being able to kind of package up both of our knowledge combined and that knowledge transfer of supporting others on their SUP yoga journey, their paddling journey, and being able to go back to their communities and offer this new modality for their own communities. I think it feels very exciting. I'm stoked because I get an opportunity to work with you, and we've connected in very different ways over the last few years. So the collaboration is very exciting for me, and being back at the edge as well too, because the edge is a very sacred space, and I love being in that space, and connecting in nature, being able to connect with other yoga teachers in that space as well too, nourishing meals, hanging out by the campfire. So yeah, definitely something I'm looking forward to this year. Yeah.
It's cool because it's like a paddle goal for us, but it's also a yoga goal, right? Like we're both yoga teachers. So it's neat that this is the opportunity for those things to like come together. And there's something really special about when we're at the edge. We often do yoga on the dock in the mornings, which is like there's yoga in a studio, which there's so many ways we can do yoga. We can do it in our home, or people are doing it in the airport and traveling and wherever. But when you come to spaces like a studio, there's a certain energy that holds,
Mhm.
and a setting that's created, and you're guided by an instructor. And when we come to the edge, we have this stunning new yoga space that I will text you a picture of the outside after, because the outside is
Okay.
now looking
Okay.
amazing. And what I was saying is we often have yoga on the dock, which is just like an incredible experience because we're starting to like come a little bit out of this contained place and be more integrated with nature. And that can really just affect our practice in such cool ways. And so we're even taking that a step further when we're doing it on the board and we're actually on the water. So that feels really exciting, and it feels full of possibility, and it can also feel a little bit like butterfly like. Um, so yeah, what's your like what is it about SUP yoga that draws you in, or why do your clients really enjoy that?
With SUP yoga, um, being outside and inviting in the outdoor elements, uh, really creates this different energy than what you get in the studio. And so, you're laying on the board, and the board's gently rocking because of the water, right? You can bring that in, this kind of restorative type of energy, and you can really bring in the sounds of the birds. You can feel the warmth of the sun on your skin, um and then work on some more strengthening, kind of balancing postures, brings an additional challenge to the practice as well. And you work different parts of the body because now your little stabilizers are working for you, right? And so yeah, there's just something about being outside and on the water, and it's hard to put it into a word for me or a sentence. But it's such a different experience than in the studio. And for my students as well too, I have a lot of folks who are into SUP yoga who don't practice in a studio. They want to come outside, and it's a very different style of practice than what you might see in a studio. So it attracts a wider range of folks as well too. And there's also that element of play on the water and being outside,
Yeah.
and adding some fun. It's adventurous, so there's so many different layers to it. um that's what I love the most. And I'm going to tell you, Courtney, what I love the most about SUP yoga is bringing somebody on the water for the first time, for their first SUP yoga experience, and they are nervous. They have that little bit of, I'm scared to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Like, I had somebody that had signed up for an intro class last year, and emails me the afternoon of saying, I'm so scared to do this. I don't think I can. Um, please tell me there's going to be other newbies on the water. Like, what can you tell me? And I said, yeah, you're at an intro class. You won't be the only one trying this for the first time. Meet me at the water's edge. And if at any time you want to back out, you can back out. And seeing that kind of that nervousness of people, because it's a little bit daring, right? People are scared to be on the water, to do yoga on the water. It sounds a bit terrifying, but then seeing them experience it, and we're paddling back to shore and seeing, that the confidence and that doing something that scares you and moving forward with that fear, that's probably the most exciting part for me of what I do, is like seeing somebody be scared, have a bit of a fear to it, trying it, and then coming back with a sense of confidence, and that they, overcame that fear.
It can be so empowering, like you just described, whether it's someone trying for the first time,
Yeah.
or, and I like that you use the word daring. Yeah, like it can be certainly, it certainly can call upon your bravery.
Yeah.
It can also call upon that if it's your second or third or fifth or 10th time, and all of a sudden you're trying a new posture and you're standing, or you're trying a balanced posture like tree, or some people are trying headstand. And you don't have to do any of these things. It's nice that you kind of you get to find your own limits, and like you said, playful. It can be playful. Some of the things that I'm just thinking of that we do to help folks progress,
Mhm.
and to come to expand their edges, is that we're always starting low,
Yeah.
and we're understanding how to work with the board and finding the edges of the board, and how to use them to help us balance. And it's kind of like setting, when we're in the classroom and we know the space of our mat, we're getting to know like this mat in a different way. And we're and you were describing like the movement of water. Sometimes it's still, sometimes there's a little wave, but I could feel that. And it's kind of like letting your body relax into that flow, that natural rhythm around you, and see if you can kind of sync up. We start really low on the back, on the stomach. We might come to seated and explore postures, or kneeling. There's progressions like that. As we start to slowly come up, there's kneeling postures, like a kneeling warrior two, and then you kind of get to explore your limits and build up from there. So it feels like folks can choose their, it's kind of the choose your adventure thing, right? Like what are you feeling into today? What might you like to explore, and play a bit from there? Do you have any other
Definitely.
ways that you help people feel comfortable? Or
Well, yeah, I've had people who, they take a few classes to actually stand on the board, and that's completely okay. What I love about SUP yoga too, it's really a good mindfulness practice, because you really have to notice where your hand and your feet positioning is. And we play with that on the board. So usually starting like in a tabletop position, and then, okay, notice what it feels like to lose one point of contact with the board with stretching your arm out. Okay, bring it back. Let's see what it feels like to stretch one leg out and then bring it back. So you slowly build that connection to the board before you get into any standing postures, or progress that way. So it's really building the foundation from the board up. Um, and then the alignment becomes super important too, where you want to make sure you're balanced. I always describe it as having a line that cuts through your board, and making sure your hand is on one side of the line, the other side of the line, and then with the feet as well too. So in a studio where you might cue warrior two, like one foot directly in line with the other, the stance is wider. So there's definitely some, different alignment on the board that can help with balance. And I find that breath work is really important too, and slowing down the breath can help you with your balance. So the tendency when you're feeling unbalanced is to hold the breath and tighten everything up. But what's going to help you is slowing down the breath and remembering to breathe. So before we
yeah,
even start moving or stand up, we do like a seated breath work exercise, and remind students that like your instinct, you're gonna tighten up, you're gonna
Yes.
hold on, and
Yes.
you're gonna hold your breath. But to restore the nervous system, to come
Yeah.
back to balance, it's really, you need that calming slow deep breath. That's an exercise we start at the beginning of class as well too, is just that importance of breathing deeply and slowly when you're on the board. Yeah.
And that's the yoga practice, right? Like, isn't that the yoga practice? I have a few different spin-offs from this, Sylvie.
Yeah.
So, firstly, like, I liked when you were describing kind of like what happens when you lift a hand and building that foundation, but it's also very exciting if people feel a little bit routine in their practice in a studio and they're just like ready to feel some different sensations and activate and turn on some different muscles and just have different awareness. That's really cool. I was thinking about when you said using the breath, about also taking someone on the water one time where they stood for the first time and their legs and were just like for minutes, and I was like, oh my, how are they still doing this? This must be exhausting. And you can see the nervous system's kind of like panicking, and we cued the breath, and she took this deep breath and she went like this to calm, and I just was so emotional watching her just find these breaths and just steady herself.
Yeah.
And it was amazing to see that. That was cool. And oftentimes what that fear and panic is on a board is like, whether it's paddling or trying yoga postures, is we have this sense that we don't want to go in the water, we don't want to fall, and what does that mean? Or we don't want to get cold, or we don't want to get wet. But in reality, we're here to like connect a little closer with the water. So it is nice to maybe dip your fingers over the side and feel that, when you're in shavasana on the board. And so sometimes too, if especially if we're doing a playful session or people are feeling really nervous, we just start in the water, and so you're already wet, and then you slide out, and then it kind of like cuts through the fear a bit because you've been in, you know.
Yeah.
So that's something that we sometimes do too.
Yeah,
um
I remember having someone I took out on the water for the first time, and it was a intro to paddleboarding, paddle skills type of session, and that fear of like, okay, I'm so scared of falling in. Okay, well, are you scared? Let's talk about it. Are you scared of the water? No, I'm not scared of the water, because some people have that fear of like, being submersed in the lake, and that's a fear. Are you scared of how to get back on your board? Because that's another fear
mm,
too. If I fall in, how will I get back on? No, I think I'm okay with that. And I'm like, okay, well, how does it feel to just jump off of your board into the lake, or slowly bring yourself into the lake? Just like, and we did that, right? Like, so sometimes part of that, I like what you said, is just like getting into the water and getting that out of the way, and then coming back on, because once you fall in, that fear dissipates a little bit, because you experience that, right?
yeah.
Um, and oh, there was something else that you said that I wanted to comment on. Um, and it's losing me right now. Okay.
If it comes back, jump in. But
Yeah.
I wanted to go into, okay, you were talking about how we can set up different alignment on the board. And
Yeah.
so that can give us more stability and balance, and that's something that we're going to be exploring in the retreat, right? And so um the retreat that we're hosting in particular is for folks who are yoga teachers already,
Mhm.
or they're coming into completion of their YTT, and they want to explore new modalities. And so you and I are doing a SUP yoga teacher training. There is also at the same time an aerial silks yoga teacher training. But I wondered if, like, who would be the right person to come to the SUP yoga teacher training? Like, what sort of experience level would they be looking to come with? What would they be yearning to get out of it? Can you kind of tell us like who it's aimed for?
Yeah, so I think you touched on this a little bit, but definitely the SUP yoga teacher training is for yoga teachers who have their 200 hour, or they're completing it before the end of the training. And also with that being on the water, having paddle experience becomes very important too. And I know that's your area of expertise, Courtney. But being comfortable on your paddleboard, having a strong, forward stroke, turning stroke. So really having that basic knowledge and skill. But what I love about this training is that when I started training, I had to take 3 different trips down south because I'm in Northern Ontario. There's not a lot of there's 0 paddle skills courses here up north. So I had to take 3 separate trips to get the Paddle Canada basics, the advanced, and then the instructor course. And what I love about this retreat is that it's an all in one. So you could do advanced and the instructor in one retreat. Is that not it? Let's
So we
restart.
can do, that's okay. We can do, yeah, yes. And I'm going to say it is a combination. So what you're describing is you had to go multiple times to get your Paddle Canada cert
Yeah.
and to get your SUP yoga teacher training.
Yeah.
Yes. So for this one, you are correct that we're combining something, just not advanced instructor. So what you're thinking of is the skills versus instructor. So yes, yes.
Yeah, but
I'll go into that a bit more.
but we're doing like basic, advanced, and then instructor, right? Just not the advanced instructor.
Correct.
That
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's what I was alluding to.
Yes.
But maybe it
Okay.
didn't come out as I had planned. Yeah.
Clarity. We have clarity now.
But
So yes. So the pathway is in order to be a SUP yoga instructor, you also have to have your Paddle Canada basic instructor certification. So in this weekend, we're also going to work folks up to that basic instructor certification. So this is where you're saying comfort on the water is really important. And I would say that these folks are intermediate paddlers or have the ability to be working towards that. And so what you're mentioning, Sylvie, is we're going to cover first the certifications, so the basic skills, the advanced skills, because we want you, in order to be a basic instructor, we need you to be able to perform the advanced skills. So that's what you're saying. Yeah. Those were your 3 trips: the certifications, the instructor, and the SUP yoga. So yeah, we want you to be like folks who are excited about paddling and being on the water, and like, having good oversight, good safe oversight of a group, and developing skills. And this is where that play comes in, and the stuff you were talking about at the beginning, Sylvia, of like moving on the board and pivoting and lifting up the nose and doing these turning strokes. So we're going to get into all that. And ideally when you come, you're not doing these things for the first time, and so it's wonderful to do some paddling in advance and to hop in on a skills course somewhere if you're able to do that. And then we're going to work through a basic instructor certification and the SUP yoga training. Does that cover kind of the pieces?
Yeah, definitely. And I like how you brought in, being able to having a good command of a group, because you're taking people out on the water. There's an element of risk, and safety becomes very important. And also, I always find I have a voice that projects. So really being able to send out clear instructions and people to hear you, right? And that's kind of some of the stuff we'll cover in the training. But how different it is to teach yoga on a board with a group than in a studio is, you know, alignment is important for balance, being able to cue very clearly, as well, because you might end up, so you're going to end up on the lake and, because of wind, because of current, it might not be that everyone's board is facing you and can see you, right? Like there are times where students are facing
Good
different
point.
ways. So the way that I teach is, yeah, very strong cueing, repetitive, um, movements, and I keep an eye on all of my students as well. So it's not like me demoing in front of a class that can see me the whole time. There's different elements at play when you are on the water. And then sometimes I'm in a class where some students are kneeling and not standing, and the other half are standing postures. So it's a different ball game on the water, and these are all things that we're going to touch on during the training, right? Like of how different
Yeah.
it is, and
Yeah.
what skills are important, that could be different in the studio. And I remember I ran a training last year, and as a student was like, I'm going to make sure all the students are placed so they could see me and their boards are facing away. And we did the practicum, the practice round. And, you know, there's a
Good
student going
luck.
this way, that way, that way. And I'm like, yeah, like wind comes in, and it could be
Yeah.
that your board, you have to let go of the control of where your board is facing, unless you're on a buoy line or something like that. We're not up in Timmins. We anchor down to the bottom of the lake, and then if there's wind during the class, then your students are going to be moving around too. So this idea of like, I'll be at the front of the class
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
happen.
That's so funny to hear because like that's happened to me, many times too. And we're going to cover all that stuff, right? Like how to transfer your yoga onto the board, what's different. Yeah. Placement of hands and feet on the, also your environmental surroundings, your situational awareness, the safety. This is why that paddling cert is included, right? Is because it's not like you could say, well, I'm just taking them on the water here, but you have to be able to assess different hazards and risks. And it could be things like boat traffic, but it could also be underwater hazards. If folks are falling in, there's rocks or logs or whatever there might be. You might have to, someone might fall and hurt themselves, or these things don't happen often, but or just like flip their board, and you might have to help them get back on the board if they've never fallen in before and they're in deep water. So how to perform a rescue, so all these things come into play. And so it's really exciting, I think, because it's I think the element of taking your practice on the water, just if you just thought about the yoga part, that's exciting. But this has like, there's a lot of layers, there's lots of stuff going on. You're responsible. So
And
I
being
think
a
it'll be really
strong
fun.
paddler when you have to tow someone back to
Yeah.
shore. I remember doing
Yeah.
that on a very windy day, and it like took all of my strength and my energy. Um,
Mhm.
and so yeah, there's different elements to it. So really being aware of what could happen, and that's what's cool about having it in this retreat format, is that we're at a lake, we'll get to encounter some of these different elements that
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll have a windy day, what it's like to take, and there's different, are you taking a group to cross a lake? Are you taking your group across a busy channel with boats, as you mentioned earlier? Is there a strong undertow? So what do you use to anchor the boards?
Yep.
Because I know in Timmins we're on a really small lake that doesn't have current or anything like that, so we could use a 5-pound kettlebell. But I know in other areas they use 10-pound weights to anchor in. How long does the rope have to be, right? Like there's
Yeah.
different elements. And what's really cool too with SUP Yoga is that you can use your paddle as a prop for the yoga practice too. So you have this extra tool that you can use during the practice too. So
Mm.
what do we do with the paddle? And do we
Yeah.
want to invite it into the practice? Sometimes it can help with balance. Other times it could be like an assisted stretch with a paddle. So another element of play too. Um,
Super cool. We
yeah.
also are going to have, okay, so something that we remember from yoga teacher training is like when you're doing your practicums and all the other people in the class are yoga teachers, as soon as you're like, step your left foot forward, do the, like when people know the cues, they already know what's coming. So the practice of it, or when they're already paddlers, they're already kind of in control of their board. So something I'm kind of like smiling here because I already know that this is like this is funny to move through because things always happen that like challenge you as a teacher.
Yeah.
But we're gonna have real students to practice with because to practice teaching the folks who come to the retreat when they do their teaching portion. Because at the same time, this aerial yoga teacher training is happening. So there's this beautiful new yoga building that was just opened this year at the Edge that's stunning. And we have anchors for silks and it's so lovely. So they're going to have a program going at the same time. And the idea is that we're going to, at the end, when folks are ready to do their teaching, we're going to switch so that SUP students get a chance to try the aerial and be taught. And the aerial folks get to be the students. So I think that would be really fun to have like new people that you have to introduce them to the board. They may never have been on the water before, but like our students will have to teach these students.
Yeah, I love the crossover of the two trainings, and then the SUP Yoga paddle students will have an opportunity to be the practice students for the aerial teachers as well too, right? So there's that nice crossover. And I don't know, for me, like the value of connecting with other yoga teachers for a little from a little all over is really invaluable. And I can tell you that, you know, how this has came up for me before too, is that I was taking one of your trainings at your retreat, Courtney, and met another SUP yoga teacher who runs a very similar business to me as me. And this was a few years ago. And we connect on the phone regularly. So I've built my network there, and she understands some of my pain points or challenges because she runs a very similar business, but we're in different markets. So we're not crossing over and competing with each other. But, you know, I can call her on the phone and say, hey, I'm kind of having a problem with this. Have you ever encountered this? So really building that network. And then I have another friend who I've met on a retreat in training at the Edge as well too, who runs a very similar business to mine in Whitby. And you know, we can connect and talk about you know, things that we would only understand because we do very similar things. So really building that network of other teachers that, you know, you can build a relationship with post training, I think is really important too, right? So it's something that you get from attending this style of training. And then you might, you know, you're doing the SUP yoga teacher training and you try the silks, and then next year you want to do the aerial yoga training, right? So there's an opportunity to really build that network and your interest.
Yeah, that's so cool. I am excited that the training is in a retreat format where we all get to put our phones away and there's no Wi-Fi. There's no cell service for all of our folks attending. So I think it's really cool when you get to, like you're saying, come together with these people that you have similar interests with and you can connect and really be present and have your meals made and have
You're supported so that you only have to like,
sauna and swim. Yeah,
you only have to concentrate on, you know, the
yeah.
training because everything is you're taken care of for the whole weekend. And I apologize because
Yep.
you cut out and then I started
Oh,
talking.
that's okay. That's okay. Great. Jump in.
I was like, oh, she
Oh,
didn't pause, she just cut out.
that's okay.
But you
I'm good with the back and forth.
okay. But you were talking about, the opportunity to, there's a sauna at the edge, which is really cool. And yeah,
And this is all part of those moments of connecting with people and with yourself, right? Like we get to step out of our day to day, and maybe someone like has been teaching yoga and they want a new challenge. Also, maybe someone is not teaching yoga, they took their yoga teacher training, but they also just want to learn.
yeah,
Like, you don't have to come here to the retreat with any intention of teaching after. You might want to just get your basic SUP instructor, or you might just want to learn the advanced skills and learn how to do the setup, the alignment on the board, because when you in the summers are at your cottage, this is something you want to do for yourself, so this is like your investment for it. So same with the aerial stuff, right? Like, you don't have to, you could just be curious about learning and want to come and connect with people in this community, and part of that connection is the time for yourself. It's the time, yeah, to sauna with folks, to swim, to go on a paddle adventure. So the setting that we're at, the lake we're on, we can like paddle to an island. There's a beautiful river, and so all of this is how we're going to practice our paddle skills, by like getting out there and doing stuff, right? Like, we're not sticking around shore. We're gonna probably do a traveling SUP yoga class. There's hikes, and so I think it's going to be like, the days, they kind of don't, it's not like a work day where you're like, we start at 5, or at 8, sorry, we end at 5. Pretty immersive, and there's going to be time for folks to have to themselves, but like, I think it's like such a dynamic and fun learning environment, and like, well, clearly I'm very excited, but I don't know, like, is there anything you have to add to like how special it is that we can do a training in a retreat environment, or what does that do?
well, I've attended a few trainings that have been in a retreat format, and I think you've hit on all the points. So it's really like you get to disconnect from the day-to-day life. You're not coming and doing the training and then going home and you have to take care of daily tasks, and you disconnect from the group, and so it really provides this opportunity to just let everything else go and focus on you. It's really cool because it's also, you're doing the training but you're also on retreat. So again, you're taking care of, like, your meals are prepared for you with care and intention. You get to stay in
Mm.
these cozy little cabins at the edge. And yeah, just immerse yourself in the experience completely, as opposed to, yeah, just having this like, oh, 9 to 5 training, you're done, you're gone. You really
Yep.
get to connect with other people and connect with yourself, because there will be free time. Like, it is a pretty intensive training, but we'll also offer moments of like, go disconnect, sit around the campfire, have a sauna, go for a swim. Um, so yeah, opportunities to learn and play at the same time.
So exciting. That's why you and I keep returning. We keep returning here, right? To bring people on retreats, and we keep investing in our training, and it's because it's just like we get these opportunities of growth and of connection, and they really fuel us and help us move forward towards our desires also. And
Mhm.
it's all very fun. What
Courtney, I want to talk
Yep.
about I want to talk about you and your paddleboard journey and where it's taken you, because I think you've been in some really amazing places
Mm,
and done some pretty cool stuff. So can we hear about that for a little
yeah.
bit?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. You know what? It, I had this feeling like it's taken me to now, which for me feels like it's taken me to the point where I can yearn to create something or go somewhere, and then I'm like, oh, it feels possible.
Yeah.
So I think that's like where I'm landing with it, is like, it's taken me to possibilities, and that feels really exciting. And so actually, the first place that I tried paddleboarding was at Northern Edge, where we're going, and this is why I like love returning every year. And so I have a standing return every September with a group. because it just like has been so impactful to me.
Mhm.
And um, when I went there, when did I go there? 2013 or 14? It was over 10 years ago, 10 years for sure. I went there and I tried paddling. And I also at that time had been doing a lot of yoga, but I was playing rugby. So my yoga was very active, very
Yeah.
physical, sweating hard. Um, and I was not as um, integrated into the other side of things and not as mindful or intentional or anything like that. I was just like, you know, so it was a wild women group that was at Northern Edge, and one of the hosts was Wendy, who is still involved with the Edge. And when I went on the paddleboard, I literally, Sylvie, heard my own voice. And every time I say this, I'm like, this sounds so weird to say, but I heard internally, I heard my own voice go like so friendly, like, oh, here you are. Like, where have you been?
Mm.
And I was like, well, that was weird. And in my head, I was like very defensive. And I'm like, I've been working, I've been doing school, I've been doing like, so that was really funny now to look back on and like observe. And then that was it. Like, that was it for the voice. It was just like, here you are, like, here, this is where you've been meant to like be in yourself, I guess, like to drop into this like moment of being on the water on a board. And on the retreat there were two gals who were just like so amazing. They had paddleboarded before and they were so graceful and strong, but their
Mm.
paddling was like effortless because they like had good technique, and I was like, wow, I want to be like them. And then um whenever I left the retreat, so also at the retreat my yoga really shifted. The yoga was very um slow, restorative, introspective meditation, and I was also like, oh, I see this is like a possibility too.
Yeah.
um so when I left the Edge, I knew that there was Swift Canoe and Kayak in South River, and I just like pulled in and was like, I'll take one. And this kind of turns into like, how do you know what to look for when buying a board? And maybe we'll have to chat about that next time. But I just kind of like was like, that one, I'll take that one, because I felt so strongly that this was going to be something really important in my life. And so I just like had to have one. And after that, I started just like paddling by myself and exploring places, and then eventually meeting folks and going out to just like community events around here and in Ottawa, and then becoming an instructor. And from there, I've been doing a lot of guiding at the Edge, hosting retreats, different groups. I um, did some ultra distance paddling. So there's a series in Ontario where you can do a bunch of different races, and they're quite long and they're self-supported on your board or canoe or kayak. And that really built up my skill set and my confidence in myself. And from there, it was so interesting. Like, it felt like every next step I did led me to the next thing, even though I probably didn't have any particular goal or awareness of where I was headed. But all of a sudden, like, something would come in front of me, like an opportunity, and I'd be like, that's for me. So kind of the distance paddling too, right? You're like, I guess I'm supposed to do that and like build that next step. And then for my 30th birthday, I wanted to go on this paddle trip to Norway, and I had seen these trips online, and so I like went to the website to book one, and there was a job posting for an expedition guide, and all of a sudden I was like, that's for me.
Like,
Like this
let me
feeling.
just take this trip. Oh, hold on. Let me guide this trip.
Yeah, and what a funny turn of events, right? Because but it was like a
Yeah.
calm every time it's been a calm knowing, and every time I've like heard myself. And so I remember on the last um whenever I was doing the racing, on the very last race of the season, it was um just like fog, white fog, and like orange sun coming up through the back. And I had this moment that where I heard my voice kind of say like, you think you think you did all this work this season for this like one race. You think you did all this work for this moment. But this moment is for like what's to come next. It's
Mm.
not even about. So I was just like, what are you what? Just this feeling of like there's still more. There's still more. There's more to
Yeah.
come. And then yeah, when I saw that job posting, I was like, oh, this literally my head going, this was for me.
Yeah.
In a but not in a way that's like, oh, I could do that. In a way that was like, could I? Like, I don't know. And then I'm like, okay, well, I like have this to support me and I have this to support me and this to support me. And one of the things I always remember is it was a video interview because they're in Norway. So I had to make a video to apply, or sorry, to apply
Yeah.
the application. And whenever I was in my own self, like me, I don't even know how to describe this. Whenever I'm me thinking about myself, I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, does this girl have what it takes? But then whenever I was doing the application and listening back to the girl in the video who felt like not me, that was a girl I was watching. I was like, oh, I believe in that girl. Like she has what it takes. Which was very I don't know, like through paddleboarding, I've had so much growth and introspection because of these different opportunities. Yeah, so that was really wonderful to spend 3 months there guiding expeditions in the fjords. So we just had these
You
camping
know, when
trips
you
that we
talk
did.
about my paddle goals, and one of the things that is on my bucket list is to go on one of those expeditions with the
Mm,
Gutsy Girls in Europe. Like I have that on one of my bucket list dream goals in this
mm,
lifetime is to do one of those expeditions. And I love the way you talk about like, you know, things being presented after you take that other step forward. Like it only was possible once you stepped into this, and not knowing
yeah,
that this next step was about to show up and that's what you were really preparing for. And I feel
yeah,
like I get shivers almost talking about it, because I feel like that's what happens in life, right? Like you start moving in one direction, and then other doors start appearing. And it's really, we can kind of can tend to get into this like day-to-day mundane repetitive um kind of lifestyle, and it's just like, if you just try something new,
yeah,
do something different and experience,
yeah,
open a different door, go another way, and then you
yeah.
never know where that could lead you. And I love how your paddle experience was exactly this, right? And the idea
And
of the growth that you've had, because it's not just a paddle and a board, right? Like it's so much more, if you're open to that. So I love that you bring, and I mean your court outdoors, you go outside to grow inside, and you have that, like, live that experience through paddleboarding.
and this is why, Sylvie, when you said earlier, when you're like, it's daring to come onto a board, some people will be like, oh, that's not daring, but it's like, but it can be really daring because you're like, you are coming into growing edges and you're actively saying like, I choose to work through this, and you don't know where it leads. And so like, I really feel that strongly that it can be like so important and amazing to like come to these edges, and the one thing leading to the next, to the next, to the next, how you described it. And then you said like, oh, I'd love to go on a Gutsy's girls trip. Like what happened that summer, Sylvie, that I went to work in Norway was I met my best friend that lives across the world doing those trips. Right. So that happened there, which was incredible. So then I got to also, yeah, go to paddle in Italy and just like have this incredible friendship that wouldn't have come if I had never gone to the edge on that board 10 years ago. So the expansion of it and like the unfolding is like really incredible. And um I mean, I'm sure you've seen that in your business too, right? Of like trusting yourself to take the next step and where that leads you. And so like for some people, It might not be this training, but for some people it could be a feeling of a next step. And I think that we would encourage anyone who feels a next step in any direction, whatever that is, to just like follow that and
Trust
let
that.
it play out.
Yeah, trust that intuition and don't worry too much about like what's after that next step, because once you take that step, you know, you'll see what else is possible. And it's funny because when I did my SUP yoga teacher training, um I was really just looking for something to do, and I love to travel and learn. And I wanted to go it's kind of like this sideways. I wanted to go to Europe. I was starting a new job. I wanted to travel, so I started looking at different yoga teacher training opportunities. And I had found a SUP yoga teacher training in Greece, and that's not where I'm going with this. But then I started looking at a lot of different offerings, and because the ones in Canada were attached to Paddle Canada, and I really wanted to have that certification as well, I ended up, you know, doing a yin training in Spain, flying back to Toronto. I was already in the area, and then doing my SUP yoga to training, and not really having a plan for what came after that.
Funny.
And I remember that first yoga class we did that Friday night, and it was hooked. It was that feeling of knowing you had to be there. So I came back to Timmins, and I talked to a few people. I said, I got to start doing this. I want to take groups on the water. And everyone, almost everyone I talked to said, that'll never work in Timmins. Like, nobody's going to be into this. Like, you're wasting your money, your time, because it's an investment. I bought my own boards. You did not see any paddle boarders on lakes or rivers in Timmins back then. Now you see them everywhere. But just coming up against that, like, this is never going to work, you're never going to do it, like, all of these naysayers, but my passion for it was so strong that I thought, okay, I'm buying 3 boards and I'm starting to take groups of 2 on the water.
Cool.
And things exploded from there. So not even knowing what the next step is, but I just had this calling of trying something new and learning something different without really having much of a plan moving forward, right, with it. So yeah, I really like that idea of like, okay, I have this intuition or something pulling me towards this, and I'll just allow it myself to be pulled in that direction, and not really knowing that what's next.
I like that description, like allow yourself to be pulled, because our brains are going to try to figure out like, what am I going to get from this? What's the value? I'm going to put out this much money, right? And like, that can all be valid, but sometimes it's like, are you willing to like trust that the pull is for you?
Oh yeah. I mean, your ego and your mind wants to keep you protected. It wants to keep you small. It wants to hold you. It wants you to overanalyze all the
Mhm,
reasons why you can't do something.
mhm.
And then really being able to just tap into that inner knowing, or that inner guide, and that feeling of being pulled, and letting everything else go. And I mean, sometimes, you know, there are reasons why you shouldn't maybe
Mhm.
do things, and it's
For
logical,
sure.
but trusting that pulling into
Yeah.
without getting in your head about it.
Well, even on your travels upcoming, did you say you're teaching yoga when you go down there?
In Costa Rica?
Yeah,
Yeah, so I'm going down for the month of May, and I'm teaching yoga at a retreat center there.
that's amazing. And like that's the result of like following a pull, right? And then like an opportunity and what comes next. And
Oh, definitely. And you know, there's a door opening there, and I don't know what's on the other side, but I'm
Mhm.
willing and able to trust that this was meant for me. And did I get in my head about it? Of course. You know, start thinking, okay, I can't actually leave for a month, can I? What am I going to do about this? Can I, you know,
Mhm.
so just all of these things come into play.
And those feelings can come in for a weekend. I can't leave for a weekend. I can't leave whatever it is, your business, your kids, your families, your whatever, right? But it's like, I don't know, are you willing to like step into possibility?
Yeah. Yeah, because there's always going to be that doubt, or even that, like, am I good enough to do this? Or like, who do I
Hmm.
think I am that I can, be a paddleboard SUP yoga instructor, right? Um,
Hmm.
if you live it also in a community like me that had almost zero paddleboarders, you might think like, oh, nobody's paddleboarding around here. It's not popular. If you're curious about maybe, starting to bring folks on the water, and you don't think your
Yeah.
community will welcome it, you know,
Just try it. We
your
dare you to
your
try it.
your mind will stop you.
Yeah.
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 So I think this is like a really good conversation we just had.